Live from MMA Fighting Studios, this is Between the Links. And now, your host, Mike Heck.
The iconic voice of Esther Lynn welcomes you to a brand new edition of BTL. Happy Thursday to us all. And here in South Carolina, it is dark and gloomy and rainy. And you know what? You might hear Mother Nature just rain down water upon us throughout the program. A nice, nurturing, calm sound to get us through our Thursday. And what a show it shall be today. So let us introduce the combatants on this week's program, and we'll get right to work. First, he's the co-host and co-matchmaker for the hit show. On to the next one. He's the Prince of Positivity, the King of the Damn North, the one, the only, my best friend from MMAfighting.com, Alexander K. Lee. AK, welcome back to BTL, my friend.
I am back for more punishment. The Jay Ellis of Between the Links. I'm not going anywhere. I am right here, ready to take on old blood, new blood, whoever you got for me today, Mike. Bring them on, bring them on. And also, come on, you Spurs, for all my football fans out there. Come on, you Spurs. That's all I got to say.
And ladies and gentlemen, joining the show for the first time, at least in this iteration of BTL, he's one of my favorite people in the sport, one of the most trusted people in the sport, and for good reason. A man many fighters have said publicly and have told me in various conversations over the years, if this man doesn't post a fight on social media, I don't believe it, 100%. So let us say hello to the great fight breaker himself from Eurosport, my pal, Big Marcel Dork. Marcel, where is he at? There he is. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure, you know.
It's great to have you here. Big Marcel has gone through different generations of the program. AK has been as well, back in the old Keith Schillen days where shows just lasted forever and ever because he would just argue every point. But now Big Marcel joins us here. So let's start with the best division in all of MMA, gaining a new fighter full-time, at least that's what it appears to look like right now. Max Holloway just competed for the UFC featherweight title at UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi, battles Ilia Topuria. The fight was as great as we all expected it to be. It ruled. Holloway actually looked damn good in the fight. And then something happened for the first time in Max Holloway's career. He got knocked out. He got knocked out bad by Ilia Topuria. Topuria retains the belt. And that led to a lot of questions. What is Max Holloway going to do? Is he going to try to battle back and build his way back up the very deep and exciting featherweight division? Or is he going to go up to 155, where he fought at UFC 300 earlier this year, knocked out Justin Gaethje, and won the BMF title? Max Holloway posts a video to his YouTube channel over this past weekend and says, I'm heading to 55. Seems like it's going to be full time. Let me just pull this up real quick. Here's what Max said. You guys saw me kind of touch upon it at the press conference, and I can honestly say I think I'm done with 145. Your boy, like I said, we're only getting older. I've done 33 fights. This cut was easy, bro, but it takes a toll cutting weight, period, at whatever weight you are. Like I said, I had to give up ramen for my featherweight camps, so I'm done with that. I don't ever want to give up ramen again. 155, here we come. And 155 is where I want to stay. So we will start with you, Big Marcel. Is this the right move? Because things don't get much easier up at 155.
Yeah, true, man. But at the same time, at 145, he has accomplished so much, you know. He lost to Topuria, not going to get a rematch anytime soon. Volk is still there. He lost 3 times to him. I think a lot of people think it should be 2-1 Volk, but hey, officially it's 3-0. So lightweight makes sense, man. And I mean, his last fight at lightweight against Justin Gaethje, that was amazing, man. He dominated for 5 rounds and then he knocked him out. So he's right in the mix there, I would think, you know. So it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the UFC can use him to put on the BMF title, as they always do when they can't find an actual title, you know. So they have a headliner for some pay-per-view. So it makes sense for them. And listen, man, if he comes to lightweight and he fights, for example, let's say he fights Dustin Poirier or somebody, you know, and he beats him this time, you know, I mean, he's right there for a title shot close to it. So It's pretty much I expected it after he lost to Ilia. Plus, it won't get much easier to cut down to 145 the whole damn time for him. So 155 makes sense. He showed against Justin Gaethje. He looked really good at 155, I think, and there were a lot of doubts because of he went to 155 before. So I'm fully for it, man. I mean, Max Holloway maybe can go Max Holloway 3.0. You know, we saw 2.0. Maybe now we can see 3.0. Who knows? I think he's still a great fighter, and I see him doing pretty well at lightweight, to be honest.
AK, Max said that he feels like this could be his Phoenix rising from the ashes moment on his video. Do you agree? Is this the right play? Because, I mean, as I have been saying for years, and not everybody agrees, lightweight is the best division in the sport, and there are just some absolute murderers up there.
Yeah, I don't know about Phoenix rising from the ashes. It's tough. He's not like super old when we look at just his age, like 32 years old. But in fight years, he's been in there for what, at least 12 years, probably more than 12 years. And if you're looking at how long he's been fighting the highest level of competition, I mean, it's a huge chunk of that time, right? It's not like he's been fighting for 12, 14 years and, half his career was spent like on the regional scene. And he's been in the UFC for so much of his fighting life, and we've all seen it. We've seen him grow up. We've seen the highs, we've seen the lows. So I don't know about Phoenix rising from the ashes. It is going to be tough. Lightweight is such a difficult division. So is featherweight. It does feel like he needed to close the chapter though on 145, and it's fine. He did almost everything he could do there. 3 fights with Alexander Volkanovski, none of them went his way. That's fine. The fact that he even got and I think deserved 3 shots at Volk says a lot about how great Max is. The fact that he was able to fight his way back to a title shot against Ilia Topuria, I think that says a lot about who Max is. And it's not like there aren't fights for him at 145. It's such a thriving division. But he's fought the best of the best. He's fended off contenders. He's played that role, right, of high-level gatekeeper. I don't know if you want to put him in that role again. I'm sure he wouldn't care if the UFC was like, well, this is where the money's at. We want you to fight like featherweight, top 10 guys. And just to test them, I'm sure he'd be fine with it. But if he's thinking more about himself and about where he can still go, 155 is the way to go. It is a lot of rematches, potentially, none of which I think fans would regret seeing again, like Dustin Poirier, if maybe somewhere farther down the road, him and Gaethje again, because that was a dream matchup when it happened, and it delivered in spades and one of the best moments ever. So, I'm not saying next, but if he fought Gaethje again, who would complain about that? It'd be incredible. Can he contend at 155 is a little bit more of a tricky question. He does have the name. He does have a path there because, like we said, he can easily book big name opponents. I think Marcel was saying, 1 fight, 2 fights. And if Islam's still at the top, fans would be very intrigued to see him fight Islam. He'd be a big underdog, but fans would still pay to see it. They'd still support Max in that regard. So, I'll stop short of Phoenix rising from the ashes, but I agree this is the move that had to be made. And it's going to lead to a hell of a lot of fun for the fans. So good for Max. This is what he wants to do. Hopefully he can eat a little more, not worry about such a severe weight cut, and just have a good time. And most importantly, he's going to go out on his own terms.
Get that ramen, son. Get that ramen. You both mentioned Dustin Poirier. Said he would love that matchup to be his, I guess, quote unquote, last dance, so to speak, AK. And look, we mentioned it. A ton of fun ones for Max Holloway. We saw the Gaethje fight at 300. It rocked. Him and Poirier for the interim title in Atlanta rocked. There's Chandler. There's Oliveira, who he has fought before, but it never really happened. Like, it's a fight that is in the books, but it never really got cooking. So one of those two guys after UFC 309, there's Dan Hooker, and the list goes on. And oh yeah, he's the freaking BMF champion, AK. So I know we do on to the next one. We have the matchmaking program, but now that we know Max is definitely going to 55, what is the fight to make for him? What's his next move? Who's his next opponent?
My best friends. I've been pushing it. I know every time I bring this up, I think I brought it up on 2 episodes of our matchmaking show so far. It's gotten kind of a lukewarm reception. There's a few people who chime in and go like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I do think people are looking higher up the rankings, maybe for, again, a fresh matchup that he hasn't had. I'm also looking at a fresh matchup. I really think Renato Money Moicano can get this fight. I know not a lot of people talking about it. I know there's not like a ton of buzz, but Money Moicano is a guy who, if he fights for a title, it'd be great someday. But he's all of his interviews, none of them are geared towards like, oh, give me a guy with a number next to his name so I can fight the champion. he doesn't care about that. It's not his number one priority. He wants names. Max Holloway might serve a dual purpose. I think if he fought Max Holloway and beat Max Holloway, that probably would put Renato in the title picture. But either way, it's a marquee opponent. It's a guy with a name. Give them 5 rounds, please. Not that they might need it. One guy could definitely finish the other, but 5 rounds, that would be friggin' sick. That's the matchup I want to see. Honestly, if I could wave a magic wand and I had to pick an opponent for Max's debut, and I think it works timing-wise, if we want to see Max return either like late first quarter 2025 or early second quarter 2025, I think that works out really well for Moicano as well. So I get it. I'm ready to be flamed. I'm not looking at the comments yet, but I'm sure once I glance down at them, it'll be a lot of like, what are you thinking? How has Moicano earned that? But he's one of the up and coming guys, like name wise in the UFC. People love Moicano. Fans love him. So it's a bit out of left field, but I'm going money Moicano. I am waving my wand and a little bit of a crystal ball. I actually like feel strongly this could happen.
Hey, look, there's precedent set, AK. Dustin Poirier knocked out Benoit Saint-Denis and got a freaking title shot against Makhachev. Renato Moicano beat the hell out of Benoit Saint-Denis before getting him out of there. And who knows, maybe he gets him a BMF title fight. But let me ask you, Marcel. AK is a proponent of Max Holloway versus Renato Money Moicano. Do you agree with him? Is this the fight to make, or do you have something else in mind?
Yeah, I have something else in mind then. I mean, it's a fun matchup, what AK says, definitely. But at the same time, both guys also both at ATT. So I don't see why they would particularly fight each other. You know, they're really difficult in fighting each other over there, because you also saw with Grant Dawson and with Gamrot and those kind of guys. So for Max, I think Max deserves, and I don't say Moicano is not a big name, but I think Max deserves a bigger name. You know, he's probably going to defend the BMF title or something if he goes to lightweight, probably, because we have now like Islam fighting Arman probably very soon. You know, and I think the winner of Chandler against Oliveira was announced being a number 1 contender fight. So maybe the loser of that one, or yeah, like I said, Poirier, man, you know, I know they fought each other before, you know, and I know that that Poirier beat him twice, but still, I think this is a different Max this time, you know, and do we want to see a third fight? Maybe not, you know, but I want to. I'd love to see it, you know. I think Dustin is Dustin is still amazing in the division. He lost his last fight, was for the title. Max won his last fight against Justin Gaethje, and Justin Gaethje knocked out Dustin Poirier before that for the BMF title. So, yeah, I'd love to see it. The third fight, I know it's 2-0 for Dustin, but at the same time, I think it's a super fun fight. But, yeah, that's how I think about it.
Last thing on this, Marcel, true or false, Max Holloway will once again fight at 145 pounds at least one more time?
Probably true.
You think he does?
Yeah, one more time. If the matchup is right, I'm pretty. Listen, if they, for example, would offer him a rematch next year against Ilia Topuria or something, which I don't know. I don't say it will happen, you know. But if they would propose it to him, I'm pretty sure he's like all these fighters, you know. You want to avenge your loss. You want to show that one time you got knocked out. Max never got knocked out before, and he got knocked out this time. The one time you got knocked out, it was not a fluke, but he can then say like, no, it was a fluke. I'm going to now knock him out, and I'm going to show you I'm the better fighter. So if he gets that offer to fight somebody really well known or big in the division, I think he might go back to 145, but I don't think he will make a run there. He probably tries to make a run at 155. That's what I think.
AK, does Max ever fight at 145 again?
You never say never in this industry, but I'm going the other way from Marcel. I do think this is finally it. It's been great for him to have the option of both. It's what has made him such a fan favorite, why he's always in the pound for pound talks, because people know he can do damage at 145. People know he can do damage at 155. But I think it just serves him better to pick a division and stick with it. And in this case, it's a lightweight. Again, for me, the featherweight chapter is over. There's still some fun matchups that we probably didn't get to see, some fun future matchups that we'd be like, oh, I wonder, you know, guys I'm considering right now, but say in 2025, some guys coming up and like, man, this would be a good, I'd love to see this guy in there with Max Holloway. But that can always be a hypothetical, because I think that can happen in lightweight too. Who knows how long Max sticks around? Maybe he gets a chance to fight big names and also gets a chance to fight some of the 155 up and comers. So it's time for him to build. I should say, add another amazing chapter to his legacy in a new division. I'll say, if I had to bet, no more 145.
We will see what happens. Fun fight territory for Max Holloway, the BMF champion. And we will see if Max can build his way back up in a new division. We'll see who can build their way back up here. The point for round one goes to Big Marcel. He's on the board, 1-0. Well done. Let the confetti fall gloriously upon your head, Big Marcel. All right, let's go from featherweight to lightweight up to welterweight, because as we talked about last week on the program, we found out about an hour or so before BTL began last week, Belal Muhammad no longer fighting at UFC 310. His scheduled first title defense no longer happening December 7th, which leaves Shavkat Rakhmonov kind of in limbo right now, but he wants to still compete at UFC 310. He wants to have an interim welterweight title fight. And he mentioned Kamaru Usman as a fight that makes sense for interim gold while Belal Muhammad is healing up. Lots happening right now, but not a lot of answers. Obviously, we've been asking around. Nothing is official. There's negotiations, but nothing has been announced or revealed or reported at this point. So, AK, first off, thoughts on a potential Shavkat Rakhmonov Kamaru Usman interim title fight if the UFC goes this route? And is this the right fight with the options they have? Or I guess I should say, based on what they had, based on something we'll discuss in a moment.
Yeah, I'm so sick of this interim stuff, and like I think Belal has commented already and said I'm not going to be out for. He doesn't expect to be out for like 6 months. He got an infection. It's been treated. You definitely want to take these things seriously. Like I don't think he's rushing back into the cage, but by all accounts, it sounds like he'll be ready for like January, February, March, the latest. Like that's not a long time. Like he just defended the title. It's I don't know. It's frustrating to see. Did I say he defended the title? He beat Leon, right? Am I? My brain is shutting down now. But either way, it's not like he won. Sorry, it's not like his last title fight was that long ago. I think I understand the urge of the UFC to kind of keep things moving. So I don't think it would really be an indictment of him and his reign so far if they made an interim title. I understand it's better for the fighters theoretically, right? It's like I think they were talking about it on Ariel's show. They were saying it might not benefit Shavkat and whoever his opponent is right away to fight for an interim title, but at least whoever wins, then when they face Belal, will get pay-per-view points. So there's no reason not to do it other than, fatigue on our side from the media, from the fans. It's always nice for a fighter to say they won a title. Like Dustin Poirier, when he won an interim title, technically he's a UFC, you could say he won a UFC title. We all know, whatever, not the undisputed champion in his division, but it's nice. It's nice to refer to Dustin Poirier, Carlos Condit, I don't know, Colby Covington, if you're a fan of his, and say, yeah, these guys won some form of a UFC title. So I'm against it, but it is harmless. It's harmless. It guarantees a 5-round fight. If it gives the guys extra money on fight night too, like at UFC 310, even better. You want to see these guys get paid, get compensated, be motivated to fight for a title. It makes sense when people see the name Kamaru Usman, they think title fight. So it's a very easy sell. I'm totally into it. My only question is, like, I don't know where Leon is in all this, and I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming him for not like being all up on social media and like, oh, I like doing all these interviews and where's my title shot and I beat Kamaru twice. He seems to just kind of be chilling and laying low, and I actually applaud that. But it is weird that the guy who just not too long ago has beaten Kamaru twice is not like in the conversation to be available for December 7th. But again, it doesn't sound like he's volunteered it, so I'm not criticizing the matchmakers. This is just a curiosity thing. I wonder how the fans feel about it. Like, why isn't Leon piping up, and why is he not part of the conversation? But yeah, perfectly fine with Kamaru, though. It'll be weird if he loses, and then it's just like 4 straight losses, and I don't know. But the streak doesn't say everything, right?
I'm wondering why Leon isn't popping off. Honestly, I really am. Unless he's hurt, unless he's injured, then that's a whole different story. But let's be honest, Big Marcel, and you know this, it took forever for Leon Edwards to get a title shot, much like it took forever for Belal Muhammad to get his title shot. And we both said when Leon fought Usman the first time, and when Belal just fought Leon, these guys have to win because they may never get another opportunity at fighting for a belt. So I'm kind of surprised that Leon hasn't chimed in. And if I'm Kamaru Usman, I'm tweeting every 5 seconds to fight Shavkat at UFC 310 because he needs to get himself a title shot. And if he says no to this, if the UFC really wants to make this fight and he says no, I don't see a path back to a title fight for him at this point, considering what is at welterweight. So are you a proponent of this interim title idea, Shavkat versus Usman? Do you see something else? Or should they just wait for Belal to heal up and just do Belal Shavkat for the real belt first half of 2025?
Listen, man, I'm an annoying punk. So for me, it's like I don't care about interim title shots. It just doesn't do it for me. At the same time, if fighters make more money out of it for interim title fights, I'm all for it. Belal is out, not very long, he said. At the same time, if you look at it from the UFC perspective, and that's where they will look from it, they need Shavkat they want him to headline, and there has to be a title on the line, because nowadays with the UFC there always has to be a title on the line with the pay-per-view. Back in the day that wasn't the case. We also have the co-main event again with Pantoja against Asakura. The UFC doesn't want that apparently to be the main event in Vegas. Also take in mind that Asakura hasn't made 125 since Obama was president of the USA. So, there are a lot of things to take in mind from the UFC not want to have that fight as the main event of the final pay-per-view of the year. So they have to look at Rakhmonov. And then you look at the opponents which are possible, I was thinking maybe they wanted to do undefeated against Ian Gary. Well, Ian's booked against Joaquin Buckley now, so that won't happen. Jack Della, he probably is not available until February, I think, so that won't happen. I think Leon Edwards doesn't take a four weeks notice fight. Well, he was a former champion, and he can pretty much jump in right in the title fight again after he beats another guy in the division. So that's why I think he's not spoken about. And I think I saw a report earlier today that he talked to a certain website that he wants to be back in March or in April or something. So I don't think he wants to. So what's left is Kamaru Usman, and also Kamaru Usman is still above Shavkat in the rankings, right? I think Shavkat is 3 and Kamaru is 2, I think. So he's a former champion. I know he's 0-3. If you break down the fights he fought, it was like he was winning against Edwards until the head kick. A competitive fight against Edwards, he lost, and he got destroyed in the first round against Chimaev, but then he came back and he almost got a draw out of it. So he didn't get, how do you say that, completely dominated in those 3 fights. So normally I would say 0-3 title fight, interim title fight, absolutely not. But he's a former champion. He's one of the most dominant champions for a long time at welterweight. I would put him right after GSP probably. So yeah, I have no problem with it if they do it, And also for Shavkat, I think if Shavkat beats Usman, it solidifies it even more to let him fight for the title, So, and also Shavkat has to fight. He hasn't fought since December last year. So for him, it's important, I think. Personally, like I said, I'm not really big in interim title fights, so I agree with AK there. But if they want, they probably got to do it, But because who else are they going to let headline this event? They don't want to have Pantoja Asakura headline the event, so they have to do something, and that has to be a title fight, because it would be weird to book a 3 or 5 round fight for a main event of a pay-per-view while you have a co-main event, which is for the flyweight title. So they got to do something, and I'm really curious what they're going to do.
I'm curious too. I because we had talked last week, maybe they just bump Chandler and Oliveira to like 310 as the co-main event and just do Pants and Asakura as the main event. Like, that's fine. Like, that's still damn good as long as you soften it with a really exciting fight with 2 big names behind it. I think it's fine, but we're running out of time here. So I'm very curious to see how this comes together and what the main event will be. But Marcel, you mentioned it. We were wondering, is Ian Machado Gary in the mix? Is Joaquin Buckley in the mix to maybe fight for the belt? And it turns out they weren't, because they will be competing in the final UFC fight of 2024, the main event of UFC Tampa at beautiful Amalie Arena. Were you surprised by this matchmaking and when it occurred, considering what was happening with the welterweight title?
Of course, I was surprised with the matchmaking, man. I feel like I didn't saw this one coming at all, to be really honest. If you also looked at I think there was a clip a long time ago where Buckley was saying like, why you don't want to fight me? And then Ian Gary explains that he wasn't interested in him. And I think this fight was offered actually right after Buckley's win as well against Nursultan Ruziboyev to fight in, it's either 300 or 303. I think it was 303. I think it was International Fight Week. And what I've heard is that Buckley didn't took that fight. So I didn't expect this fight to be booked. But apparently Ian Gary couldn't fight somebody who was higher ranked than him, and he took this fight. Listen, I'm good with it. Buckley's on a very good streak in the division. Hasn't lost since going to welterweight, from middleweight to welterweight. And Ian is a good fighter. He's talented. He's showing that in every. He has a smart, high fight IQ. I know a lot of people are always crapping on Gary, that they don't like him, but if you look at his fight IQ, he did exactly what he had to do against MVP to get the win. A lot of people would have just being stupid and lured into a certain thing. He didn't. He just stuck to the game plan and he won that fight. So that showed me that he had a high fight IQ. I like the fight. I think it's fun. Buckley has that knockout power, but one punch knockout power what we saw against Stephen Thompson. But yeah, actually, I was just surprised, let's be honest, because the UFC pretty much destroyed two options to fill in 310. And I was like, okay, we can leave those. Those will not be fighting Shavkat. Only Usman is left now. So it was pretty weird. I think both Buckley and Gary would have been down to fight Shavkat, but probably the UFC was like, that's not big enough. We need a bigger name. And then maybe they come with Usman. We'll see. But yeah, I was surprising to me. But it's a fun fight. Looking forward to it. Last fight of the year, December 14, Tampa. Yeah, let's go,
AK, everybody knows how I felt about Joaquin Buckley the first half of 2024 with the call-outs, the Conor McGregor call-out being, in my opinion, the worst call-out in the history of the sport. Some of the things that he continued to do on social media, the stuff with DC. He was quickly becoming one of the most disliked fighters on the entire roster. He just wasn't getting over. He was winning fights and people gave him credit for that, but it was the other stuff that made people just so disinterested in him. And then he fights Wonder Boy, and he comes in there and he has this moment with Kevin Holland. There's this hotel video of Kevin Holland telling him like, go tackle this guy, Joaquin and them having a nice conversation. And then Buckley goes in there, has a fun fight with Wonder Boy. It's really, really fun, and knocks out Wonder Boy. And then he gets on the mic and he does the thing, AK. He does the right thing. He calls out Kamaru Usman. He says, I'm not at the title yet, but I'm coming. Give me Kamaru Usman. Let's go. And all of a sudden he's back. It gives me hope for this world, AK, that when you fall down, you can get back up again. They're never going to keep you down. And now Joaquin Buckley is in a main event. He's in the main event against Ian Machado Gary at UFC Tampa. What was your reaction to this matchmaking? And if I told you back in March that Joaquin Buckley would be in the final main event outside of the UFC Apex, would you have believed me?
Mike, I'll be honest. This to me was a little bit of a blind squirrel finding a nut moment. I don't want to say that Buckley doesn't know what he's doing, but I do feel like he just kind of fell upon the right call out. He did a classic. I love these kind of call outs, a classic shoot for the moon, you'll land in the stars type thing. So obviously he didn't get Usman, but he got a guy with a ton of cachet right now, Ian Machado Gary, undefeated. I think I would say a slightly less difficult opponent than Usman. People may disagree. Mileage may vary. There's certainly an age gap at this point too, right? We don't know. Gary's on the rise. Usman presumably declining just from wear and tear and age. Like, this is not no insult to him. It's just this is how it works. So yeah, in that sense, Buckley got like a really, really, really good opportunity, and he's main eventing Tampa. I do want to echo kind of what Marcel said though, and the UFC really made their job hard for themselves a little bit here, because either one of those guys would have been a fine opponent for Rakhmonov. Now, Tampa, I suppose, did need a main event. I guess they would have had to go with the Mackenzie Dern Hebus rematch as the main, which I actually would have found interesting, because I would want them to gauge sort of like how much of a star is Mackenzie Dern at this stage of her career, because they've pushed her hard. She's pretty popular. Is she so popular that she can carry a fight night card? I think so, and that's only based on what we've seen recently, where like as every time they go on the road, they break records no matter what is the main event. Like Cannonier versus Imavov at the KFC Yum Center in Louisville, that set a record. That set the record. And then that record was then broken by UFC Edmonton, which was headlined by Moreno and Albazi. That just set the North American fight night record for the UFC. So I don't know. I don't know if they needed to like pad this card. I wish they'd kind of see it, like how insanely powerful is this brand right now. Because I have a feeling they still would have done extremely well with Hebus and Dern at the top of the card, and you got Swanson, Quarantillo, some other. It's kind of a decent card, like it's kind of a decent undercard. So, but the bean counters of the UFC know way more about that stuff than I do. Maybe they gauge ticket sales, social media interest, and they can tell like, okay, this is trending towards not selling out or trending towards not cracking this number that we want. So I get it. It's a great matchup in a void, probably in the works before. Like, you know, Belal fell out. Like I know Ian Machado Gary did that video after saying like that he released what he said about Shavkat before, kind of suggesting he was going to step in there. But I'm guessing that it was either in the works or finalizing his fight with Buckley, and you know, he's just putting it out there because he's Machado Gary, and you know that's what his team does, and that's smart. So, yeah, sorry. So I kind of rambled there, but to tie it all together, love this matchup. Great opportunity for Buckley. Actually, really good opportunity for Gary as well. But the UFC just making their lives harder by taking two pieces off the table. So very strange situation we're in.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting fight. There's a lot to, I guess, be excited about. We still have to fill that hole for UFC 310, but Tampa's got themselves a good one. And who knows, Joaquin Buckley could enter 2025 as like the number one contender at welterweight, which is unbelievable to think about, but that's just the way the sport is. And let's talk about the aforementioned UFC Edmonton event, the event that just ended maybe 25 minutes ago. The point for round number 2 goes to the Ramblin' Man, AK. Nicely done. 1-1. We even
on the board.
He's on the board. Yes, the highest grossing UFC Fight Night event in North American history was this past Saturday. UFC Edmonton in the main event. By the way, that card was slog city. It just took forever and ever and ever. And this wasn't like PFL pacing or anything. This, like, all these fights just seemed like they were all 8 rounds. They just kept going and going and going. But Brandon Moreno returns to form against Amir Albazi. A lot of people had their eye on this fight. Moreno coming in on a 2-fight losing streak, losing a pair of split decisions to Alexander Pantoja, losing the flyweight title. There are people who thought he won that fight. There are a lot of people who thought he beat Brandon Royval at UFC Mexico City back in February in a fight that, if you watch Brandon Moreno compete, he just wasn't himself. Brandon's talked about not being himself. His head coach, Saif Zayud, has said to me and others he wasn't himself in that fight. But boy, was he himself in this one, Big Marcel. What a performance from Brandon Moreno. Your reaction to the 5-round thumping from the Assassin Baby, and what would you like to see next for him?
Yeah, he looked really good, man. I think Brandon Moreno, and he needed it, you know. Although those last 2 fights were split decision losses, you don't want to have 3 losses in a row, you know. And he was, I think, only one judge at the first round for Albazi. I think he won all 5, you know. He looked really good. The striking was really good, was super sharp. Albazi never came in his own game, I felt like, you know. And yeah, I mean, with Albazi, I still think the guy's super talented. He's still young. He will still develop. He came back after a really bad injury. I don't think anything away from Brandon, by the way, you know, but I felt like Albazi didn't really show up like he normally does. But Moreno did amazing. You know, he was really good. Yeah, who's next for him? That's a difficult question, you know. Listen, if Kaya Sakura beats Pantoja, I think he makes a case, but at the same time, Royval makes a case, and I think Royval makes a bigger case than Moreno. So for me, what I like to see, I think Moreno, call me crazy, but how fun would it be to see him fight Tatsuro Taira? I know Taira lost to Royval, but Taira showed in that fight that he is one of the top dogs in the division. It was close. He lost 3-2, in my opinion, to Royval, but it was super competitive. Just like Moreno, Royval was competitive. Bro, give me Taira against Moreno 5-rounder. Do it in front of a crowd, not in the Apex. They probably will do it in the Apex. But Do a 5-rounder, Moreno against Tyra. Do the Mexico in February if they go to February. I think it's an amazing fight, man. I mean, do it, and the winner of that one, then the UFC can still fulfill their dream if Asakura wins, and for example, if Tyra wins, to do that Asakura-Tyra fight, which they really want, I feel like. But yeah, I think Royval has a bigger case to fight for a title if Asakura wins. And that's the thing, man, with this division. Pantoja beat everybody. So that's how I feel about it. Moreno against Tyra. You can do the Cara France fight again. I don't need to see it again, to be really honest. But it's okay if they do it. But for me, I like to see a fresh matchup. Moreno against Tyra would be fucking fun. Would be freaking fun.
Marcel, it's okay. We're not going to get demonetized if you drop an F-bomb. It's all good. It's okay. AK, what are we thinking here? Brandon Moreno looks incredible. You could see it in his eyes in the walkout. I told Saif Saeed I knew Brandon Moreno was going to win this fight when Buffer was introducing him. I could see it in his face. He had that focus in his eyes. We really haven't seen from him in his last couple of fights. And then he goes out there and pitches a near-perfect game against Albazi. What do we do now?
We talked about this on our matchmaking show. I think I forgot to express this idea, though. Maybe I said it on the post-fight show. Brandon is in my opinion, is kind of entering. Listen, we just talked about this beginning of the show. He's almost like the Max Holloway of the flyweight division right now. Which is not to say I feel like he needs to go up to 135 anytime soon. Only he would do it for that Cejudo fight, which I guess it's not going to happen. If he's going to stay at 125, as he should, now I think he kind of has to play again that role of top 5 gatekeeper. That can lead to some really fun fights. That can lead to post-fight bonuses. Again, more fame, more paychecks. Again, Albazi was a perfect example. A guy who was firmly in the top 10 of the UFC, needed to really, really be tested. People, beats Kai Kara France. People were not convinced by that performance. It was a very close split call. A lot of people felt it should have gone the other way. So then you throw him in there with a champion, one of the 3 best flyweights to ever live. And this is what you see. This you get properly tested. And there's a lot of other names in the Albazi range who I feel like could be put in the same way. To continue the Holloway comparison, again, Moreno is young. He's only 30. It feels like we've been watching him fight forever because, again, we kind of have. Much like Max, we've seen him grow up in the UFC. Much like Max, he's had rivals at flyweight that he's fought multiple times. Max at featherweight, Brandon at flyweight that he's fought multiple times. So there's going to be a bit of repetition there if we keep trying to match him up with only top guys. Brandon Royval, Alexandre Pantoja, Kai Kara France, he's just fought all these guys. He's fought them. And I'm fine with seeing him fight them again. I just don't know if that's the path that they need to go. So if people listen to the matchmaking show, I suggested something like Bruno Bulldog Silva if he beats Manel Kape, UFC Tampa. That's just an example. I just think that'd be an amazing fight. 2, Bruno would be on a hot streak akin to what Albazi was on. And we'd really see a test. We really see a test that this guy could be a contender. And like Holloway, if you're Moreno, you string together 1, 2, 3 wins. Guess what? You're back in the title picture. Whether it's Pantoja, who still has it in 2025, whether it's Kai Sakura, who gets it. Obviously, if Kai Sakura wins right away, you probably just book him Moreno. But there are several paths for Moreno to get back to title contention. Again, some of them involve getting a big name right away. Some of them involved him kind of grinding his way back. But he's in a very good spot after that win, and I think it did a lot to restore faith in the Assassin Baby brand. But I like him as the flyweight Holloway. Again, look where Holloway's career has gone. Right, it's gone pretty good. Yeah,
let's do Brandon versus Brandon 3, as I've been pushing for.
Sure.
Winner gets a title shot. Loser changes his name. I think that's the way to go. I love that very much. Let's put a bow on UFC Edmonton real quick, AK. Outside of Brandon Moreno, who I think to me was the biggest story, the big shining moment, but there were others in the third longest card in UFC history. Who was the low-key MVP of UFC Edmonton, AK? Outside of Brandon Moreno, when your grandchildren say, Grandpa AK, tell me about UFC Edmonton in November of 2024. I know Brandon Moreno won, but what's the other memorable moment from that event?
I mean, I was going to say Alexander Rakhmonov, but apparently the UFC and the officials did not feel the same way, as it appears he has not been released, but was not immediately re-signed in the wake of his workman-like unanimous decision win over Rodrigo Nascimento, I think, to put it fairly. There was actually a lot of standouts. Like this is one of those cards where I felt like for the most part it worked out for them, even if on paper it wasn't didn't put on didn't light a lot of people's hair on fire, as it were. But I'll shout out Dustin Stoltzfus. I'm going to shout out Dustin Stoltzfus because he probably bought himself like 2 or 3 more UFC fights, and I think he's in some ways reframed how the UFC should look at him. He was very much brought in to lose to Marc-Andre Berriot. The odds certainly said so. I know Marc-Andre was something like a 2-1 favorite, even more than 2-1 favorite, depending where you looked. And for good reason. Stoltzfus is a guy who gets there and gets finished. But we always say, win or lose, you need to keep people like that around. Like I wish they hadn't released Victoria Leonardo. Shout out to Victoria Leonardo, who just got back in the win column at Invicta. She happens to get in there and lose in spectacular fashion, or that at least in her UFC career. There's a lot of other fighters like that. Stoltzfus is one of those guys. But he's also one of those guys that can sometimes turn things around and give you an incredible finish. And that's what we saw at UFC Edmonton. So I'm going to give him a big shout out. I hope he gets at least 2 or 3 more fights in the UFC. Don't care if he becomes a top 15 guy. Don't care if he becomes a top 30 guy. That's not why you have guys like Dustin Stoltzfus around. They'll get in there. They'll fight anybody. Sometimes they're going to make their opponent look really good. Sometimes they're going to make their opponent give their opponent a serious reality check. And when you have people like that, like those are actually like really, really fun fighters to watch. So shout outs to Stoltzfus.
Dustin Stoltzfus getting the shout. Big Marcel, who's your low-key MVP of UFC Edmonton?
Yeah, I had to really dig deep in my mind because I don't think it was that amazing of a card. But if I have to pick somebody, I would say I really like Jasmine Jastovicius again. I think she might be the one of the best fighters in Canada right now. She's ranked. She's pretty high ranked now. She beat Ariane Da Silva. I still have problems to say Da Silva and not Lipski. It's so difficult, because you have still Lipski in your mind, but you have to think it's now Da Silva. I think she looked really good, man. I like Jasmine a lot. I think she shows a lot of growth in her fights. If you look in her fights so far in the UFC, she only lost twice. She lost to Tracy Cortez in a close fight, and she got completely destroyed by Natalia Silva in 3 rounds. But I mean, I don't see that as that can happen. As Mike Hack would say, natty ice. So I mean, I thought she looked really good. I like to see what's next for her. I would match her up against somebody in the top 10. I think she can do well. And she's not young, not to say she's old, but I think she's 35 or 36 now, So if she has to make a run in the division, she has to do it now. And I think the time is right for her. I see a lot of fun matchups. I would match her up with somebody like a Caitlin Sermonara. I think that would be perfect, to see where she stands right now. So for me, if I had to pick one, I would say Jasmine Jastovicius.
AK, didn't you pick Sermonara as well? You picked her, right?
Friends forever. Marcel, I think we just had a friends forever moment. I love that matchup. Yes, I think it's time for her to see if she can survive a Sermonara. You guys don't know what I'm talking about.
I like the Jessica Andrade fight, but still, there's options. And shout out to Yusuf Salal as well.
Big.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mike, what do you think? Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know if I'm even allowed to ask this, but Rose Namajunas lost to Blanchfield. Why not do the 3rd fight with her and Jessica Andrade? And you can do it at 115 and 125.
So here's a thing that we've determined on to the next one. And one of our listeners pointed this out to us. We're no longer going to ask for that fight. We're no longer going to ask for that fight. We're no longer going to ask for Derek Lewis versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Because those are the 2 most sensible fights in the UFC right now to make, and the UFC just refuses to put them together. So we're just not going to ask for it anymore because there's no interest there. Even though everybody wants to see it, they won't make it. So I don't understand the thought process. So we're just kind of giving up on it. But yes, to your point, Namajunas Andrade 3 has been the fight to make for like 4 years now. And they're still not doing it. So
I await the day, Marcel, that we see you either break it yourself or we see that sweet Marcel tweet that says Namajunas Andrade 3, either reported by you or reported by someone else. We are all waiting. We're all waiting for that day.
Yeah. But not holding my breath. Much like Derek Lewis versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Who knows? Maybe Alexander Romanov finds his way back to the UFC. We wish him well in his future endeavors, at least for now. He could be back in the UFC tomorrow. Who the hell knows? But guys, We talked about history at the box office for UFC Edmonton. Now we're going to talk about history and just history. UFC Vegas 100 coming up this Saturday. The point for round 3 goes to Big Marcel for asking questions and correctly identifying Natalia Silva as Natty Ice future flyweight title challenger. Guys, it's UFC Vegas 100 time. Been waiting for this. Our old friend GC has been building this up for like a year. Jed has been building it up for like a year on No Bet Spot, and we are finally here. The biggest question we had, there are 2 huge questions we had this year. One, what is going to be the main event of UFC 300? And the other big question was, what is going to be the main event of UFC Vegas 100? And it's Neil Magny versus Carlos Prates, which if you told me this in January, I would have been like, take a run, take a walk, blow off some steam because you are exhausted and tired and you are sleep deprived. But that's what we're getting. I spoke to Neil Magny yesterday. He said he was always the plan to be in the main event. He just didn't know who his opponent was because Carlos Prates was booked against Randy Brown at Madison Square Garden. They moved some things around, and then Prates was brought to Magny's attention. He's just like, sure, he's fun. He's tough. I'll go fight him. And fights just are falling off left and right, AK. This event is just, it's everything you expected UFC Apex Vegas 100 to be. Is this what you expected, AK? The lineup, all of the bumps and bruises this card continues to take. Is this just poetic for UFC Vegas 100?
I'm a little disappointed there's no heavyweights on here. They let go of Sakai a long time ago. I had been campaigning for them to give Augusto Sakai a Las Vegas residence a la Elvis, and that never happened. And I'm still upset about it. He should be on this card. They should have given him a call for this special occasion. I'm still processing this card, man. We just got sort of as far as we know, the final lineup today. UFC usually puts out a press release with the lineup, the updated lineup for Saturday. They usually send it on Thursdays. And yes, Magny, Prates, the main, Ricky Tercios, Bernardo, Sopage, the co-main, Mearshart, RDR. Mearshart and one champion superstar, RDR, third from the top at the UFC Apex. Luana Pinheiro, Jillian Robertson, and I think bumped up to the main card as far as we know now, Mansour Abdul Malik and Dusko Todorovic. So good for them. Some of their fighters got bumped down, whatever. Again, there was changes to the card. So it's something, man. I made a joke about heavyweights. I'm actually also a little disappointed there's not a lot more Apex like all-stars on here, if that makes sense. I get it. Probably some of those fighters who have competed on a lot of Apex cards, maybe they're just not with the UFC anymore. Magny, I mean, the perfect choice. Company man, has fought at the Apex many times. I think Matthew Semmelsberger has also fought at the Apex many times. I don't know if I'm forgetting. Other than that, I don't see a lot of names here who have logged like 4, 5, 6 Apex appearances. Maybe I'm forgetting. I think Damon Blackshear has also been here quite a few times. I don't know. Maybe I'm forgetting, but I'm a little just disappointed. Like legitimately, I know people probably think I'm joking, but this would have been a very cool way to sort of reward fighters who had, kind of helped them out during that pandemic time when they first started doing the Apex. And then when they've stuck with it over the last few years, because it is very cost effective, it is the most the easiest way for the promotion to provide cards for ESPN Plus. Like they would never come out and say it. Like they would never just come out and bill the card that way. Like this is our commemoration and thanks to these fighters. But I would have liked to have seen more. It's fine. It's fine that they've done what they've done, which is, I would say, not treat it like anything special at all. Which again, most fans probably won't either. Let's be serious. We're making a lot of jokes about it being, Vegas 100 or Apex Card 100. Most fans are kind of like taking the piss out of it. So maybe this is, they've booked like other Apex cards. A few veteran names, some people making their debuts, some fighters who may emerge as future contenders. I mean, that's the Prates side of it in the main event. Vinod Ritter's just really weird. What a weird addition that is. So yeah, I'm only disappointed that they didn't lean into the 100ness of it, the apexiness of it. But otherwise, it's a normal Vegas fight card.
Yeah, the middle Mearshart RDR should be the main event because doing UFC Apex 100 without a middleweighty main event is a travesty. It's an absolute travesty. We got no Brendan Allen. Khalil Roundtree is an Apex All-Star. Sean Strickland is the president of the Apex, but obviously he's not going to be headlining UFC Vegas 100 because he's a pay-per-view star at this point. But at this point, Marcel, when you look at this lineup, what it is, the ins and outs, the changes, young Zack Scruggs getting his UFC debut on this card on short notice, is this the way you would have foreseen it if you could draw it up? UFC Vegas 100.
I mean, I was laughing about the Apex All Stars. Alex said it sounds like Striker Challenger, you know. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the UFC really cares if it like 100, 101, 102. They just fill the events, you know. So Magny Prates, who would have thought? Yeah, in the beginning of the year. I think the beginning of the year, Prates had no UFC fights yet, right? He made his debut this year, or was it earlier last year? I don't remember anymore. But he came from the Contender Series last year. But yeah, I mean, the Apex cards are like always hit or miss. You know, sometimes they're really fun to watch, and then you get the card. I remember that card with Amanda Lemos and Fernand Jandiroba, where a lot of people didn't like that card when it was announced, you know, and then actually the event itself was very fun. You know, I would say one of the most fun Apex cards of the year. So we'll see. I don't know. I think it's weird to let Rainier made his debut on an Apex card. That's my opinion as a former two-time champion of one championship, and obviously as my countryman. But yeah, at the same time, I'm looking forward to the card. I think there are some fun matchups on it. Co-main event, kind of odd. You know, I never understand. Dana always said, I remember him saying in clips, every fight we have a specific place for on the card. We made sure that fight is there and that fight is there. I mean, I like Ricky Tour shows a lot, and I like Bernardo Sopai, but co-main event seems kind of odd, you know. Ricky needs a win, I think, and Sopai had the fight of the night debut, I know, but he got viciously knocked out as well. So it's kind of weird to have that as a co-main event. I don't really mind. I watch everything, so, but yeah, I never understand the bout orders. You know, it's like. I mean, let's be honest. Last week, Edmonton, who expected Caio Machado against Branson Ribeiro to be on the main card, to be fair, you know? I mean, that was, I honestly more expected to have Romanov against Nascimento on the main card because that was a heavyweight fight, and the UFC always gambles with heavyweight fights. So, I mean, yeah, what can I say? I'll watch it, but the card itself, there are some fun matchups, but it's a typical Apex card, in my opinion.
Yeah, the main event should have been Rebellis to Spain versus Tai Tuivasa. That's what they should have done instead of throwing Rebellis to Spain in the Apex in general against Austin Lane or putting him against Waldo Cortez Acosta, which I warned you about. Do not book that fight. You will make Rebellis as non-fun as possible. And now the blueprint is there and Rebellis is on to other things. But last thing on this, Marcel, if you had to take a guess, state your case for what will be the fight of the night at UFC Vegas 100.
Oh, great. You put me on the
Your
spot
face
here.
tells the whole story.
What would be the fight of the night on this card? Well, you know what I think would be maybe a fun fight? Maybe Gaston Bolaños against Cortavius Romeus for some reason. I think that would be a fun style matchup, you know, and that can be a fun fight. So if I have to pick, maybe I'm forgetting a fight which would be really good as well, but that's the one that comes at the top of my head. So I'm picking that one.
It's a good one. AK, fight of the night.
Boy, I'm gonna go with Chuck Buffalo and Matthew Semmelsberger. I think I got a good feeling this could go a number of ways. It could end in a quick knockout. That's so, you know, that might bump it out of fight of the night territory. But I got good vibes, and I think where both guys are. I don't know if it's a loser leaves town match, but it's going to be tough for whoever loses. Is their UFC career is not going to be in the best shape. Semmelsberger, it might be his last fight, so I think he's going to leave it all out there. And I kind of like Radke as a guy who's going to be like a good action fighter going forward. Depending, you know, should his UFC career last some time. So this to me is like the definition of a sleeper. It's like you're kind of looking at two names who are, I don't know, maybe hovering around somewhere from the 30 to 40 range in the welterweight division, but both guys have power. Both guys, you know, they like to throw. I like it. This is a Dana White. What do you say? If you didn't know, now you know. Whatever his whole, whenever he gets cocky about a fight being good between two people that no one, you know, most fight fans aren't familiar.
Everybody knows, and everybody knows is going to be good.
Sure.
Yeah.
You have to scream it in the camera.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Here's a fight you might not know
no.
about. Gerald Mearshart versus Freddie Ritter. He's 0 from 1. Like, no shit. Everybody's been talking about that fight. Of course it's going to be good. Of course it's going to be good. By the way, shout out to Cody Stamen versus Damon Blackshear, which you probably get the if you don't know, now you know stamp of approval, because that fight's going to be really good. Cody Stamen not only needs a win, but he needs like a memorable performance because he's so good, man. He's so good, and he's got all the skills, and he's been in there with everybody, but he's like this generation's Jimmy Rivera. He just can't get over that like next level, like for some reason, and he's got everything.
I was going to mention Cody as like a Apex All-Star, but he's actually like amazingly avoided the clutches of the Apex for a long time. Like he was like everybody else during the pandemic. Like, yeah, he was in there quite a bit. But once they start hitting the road again, I'm just looking. He hasn't been in the Apex since for like 3 years. He's been on the road. He's fought at 2 pay-per-views. He's fought in Austin. He's fought in Charlotte. He's fought in Louisville. So good for you know what? Good for you, Cody. Good for you for not being an Apex All-Star, frankly, and being able to be there in front of fans.
Yeah, Timber Garimbo should have been on this card. Go ahead, Marcel.
Let's be really honest. You know, there won't be any fight of the night on this card because there are no unranked heavyweights. So.
Oh yeah, there you go. See,
that's true. That's very, very true. All right. Well, there'll be ranked heavyweights next week. John Jones and Stipe, and there'll be some other things happening. But the point for round 4 goes to my best friend, Alexander K. Lee. 2-2, ties it up. And you know what that means. It is time for the knockout round. One question will decide it all. Both of these gentlemen will get the same question. They will both get 60 seconds to answer their question. And then the peeps will vote. They will decide who wins the matchup because #people power. AK, you are the last person on this program to get a victory between the two of you. Price is Right rules. Do you want to bid on the first showcase, so to speak, or do you want to pass it on over to Marcel?
Have you noticed that on Family Feud? Do you watch Family Feud, Mike? You're a game show guy, right?
Of course. I've seen all the hosts.
Have you noticed no one passes anymore? Oh, everyone plays. I've not seen anyone pass in years.
Yeah, it's just like Price is Right. No one but it's the opposite of Price is Right. Everybody passes the first showcase on Price is Right.
I swear that like back in the older days of Family Feud, it was like even. Sometimes people would pass, sometimes they would play. I mean, you want to play because it's more fun, but didn't people used to pass more? People in the comments, Family Feud fanatics, didn't people used to pass more? No one passes anymore. Anyway, that's sort of I actually just wanted to know because I thought it was crazy. Anyway, obviously, Mike, that means I'm not passing. So
You're going first.
I'll be a modern Family Feud player and not pass apparently because that's just not a thing that happens. So yeah, I always go to merch.
Shout out to Richard Dawson and Ray Combs, the 2 OG Family Feud hosts, and then it was like everybody that was on the sitcom. Richard Karn, the guy who played Jay Peterman on Seinfeld. All these guys got opportunities. Yeah, there's so many hosts, but now Steve Harvey's doing the damn thing. AK, next Saturday is UFC 309. We have John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. We have Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. And there were reports yesterday that fight was in jeopardy. I'm told that is not in jeopardy. In fact, I'll be speaking to one Charles DuBronx Oliveira in about 90 minutes from right now as we speak. We got Karine Silva, Viviane Araújo, Bo Nickel, Paul Craig, Mauricio Huffy versus James Lontop, Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders, Jonathan Martinez versus Marcus McGee, Jim Miller, Damon Jackson, Marcin Tybura, Janata Denise, Mickey Gall, Ramiz Brahimaj, Oban Elliott versus Basil Hafez, Veronica Hardy, who continues to be the first fight of all these cards and win all the time, taking on Eduardo Mara. We lost Nikita Krylov versus Azamat Murzakanov. We lost David Onama versus Lucas Almeida, although Onama could remain on the card. So, AK, here's my question. We are 9 days away from UFC 309. You just heard the entire lineup from top to bottom. AK, UFC 309 is blank. Fill in the blank and show your work. Go.
UFC 309 is necessary. That's how I'll describe it. We need to get... No, I'm sorry. We need to move on from some of these things. The main event, obviously... I don't know how much BTL time has been has been given to talking about John Jones, some and I love BTL. Everyone loves BTL, but my God, if I never hear John Jones, Aspinall, Miocic, whatever, talked about on the show again, it'll be too soon. So this fight needs to happen. I don't care if John Jones doesn't fight Tom Aspinall. I want him to. I don't care. But to make a decision, is he going to retire? I know it's not going to happen on fight night, probably. That's fine. But at least we'll get some idea. We'll come one step closer to what's next for the heavyweight division. And this also goes for Michael Chandler. This man, he's fighting. He's finally fighting. It's a fight that no one really asked for, but it's a good fight on paper. And now I feel like he can move on from Conor McGregor. So the theme of this card is that it's necessary. It's moving on. Bo Nickel is fighting again. And hopefully we can go into 2025, guys, with clear minds and clear hearts.
Necessary. AK's answer is necessary. UFC 309 is necessary. Let's bring in Big Marcel. Big Marcel, same question for you. UFC 09 or 09. UFC 309 is blank. It's like match game. Fill in the blank. Go.
UFC 309 is like a yearly event in New York, which is normally stacked. And now I think it's really like top heavy with John Jones, Stipe Miocic. We have to see this fight. It cannot be like canceled again or whatever, because it really closes up the division, in my opinion. They have an interim champion who keeps defending the interim belt. It's completely charade that he is like the backup fighter in that fight, because he won't fight either John or either Stipe if one of the other not fighting. But we'll see who wins and what happens. I think they both retire, but whatever. Co-main event, Chandler against Charles Oliveira. It's a fun fight, probably the most fun fight of the card. Not a fight I was really looking forward to, but it's a fun style matchup, looking forward to it. Corinne Silva, Viviane Araújo, young against old, upcomer against established fighter, looking forward to it. Bo Nickel can go further can get in the rankings, maybe if he beats Paul Craig. And Mauricio Rufi, big talent against James Yontop. Looking forward to it.
All right, UFC 309. It is an event that is going to happen, and it is an event we will have a watch party for. So next Saturday, by the way, we're going to back-to-back watch parties next week. 2 nights in a row, watch parties. We'll have a watch party next Friday for Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, and then we'll have another one Saturday for John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. And by the way, quick programming note, as you guys cast your votes for either of these two fine gentlemen, BTL will be on Tuesday next week. So we're going today, not on Thursday next week. It's going to be Tuesday. So right back 5 days after this, we'll do it again. We'll talk Paul Tyson. We'll talk UFC 309. We'll talk about everything that happened to UFC Vegas 100. That alone will probably take 75 minutes just talking about that historic event leading into those two big cards. And who knows, maybe we'll have a UFC 310 main event to talk about and other things as well. So go ahead and cast your votes. We'll have a preview show tomorrow for UFC Vegas 100. We'll have the Q&A. We'll have the post-fight show. We'll have on to the next one. And then it'll officially be fight week for UFC 309, the return of John Jones, the return of Stipe Miocic, and all sorts of fun things. So cast your vote. And as soon as we see Casey on the screen, then we'll know that we have a winner. And that's a wonderful thing. So,
man,
AK, how are we feeling?
That last question was kind of depressing.
I needed it. I needed some good.
Man.
I needed to hear it.
I know. Neither Marcel nor I seem particularly jazzed up. We're coming to the end of the year, and it's been a pretty good year for the UFC overall. I mean, money-wise, it's always a good year for the UFC. They're rolling in dough, but entertainment-wise, when I think when it comes to making our like best of lists and like that, we're gonna have a lot of good stuff to choose from. So this is me trying to kind of end things on a positive note. And again, we could see fun stuff at 309. Like Oliveira Chandler is a fun fight. It's a fun fight, whether you care about what it means for title implications or is Chandler now gonna, if he beats him, can he get the McGregor fight? Forget all that stuff. Like, this is two really fun guys. We've seen them fight before. First fight was super exciting. And Chris Weidman fighting Jim Miller, Martin Tabora, Veronica Hardy. I mean, we got names.
I have a feeling AK is taking an extra minute here, man, for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah. Don't let that affect your voting. I apologize. Please, not let that affect your voting.
Just to build this up, if there's one thing you don't want to miss this year on MMA fighting content, Jed Meshew is going to be watching Michael Chandler fight Charles Oliveira live on the watch party. And if Michael Chandler wins or loses, Jed's reaction is going to be the greatest thing we have seen in this space all year long. And if he wins, Oh my God, Jed is going to lose his mind. You might see his head pop off of his shoulders live on air. You do not want to miss that. And I do see Casey here. He's got sleeves, long sleeves, a hoodie on. It's cold in Cali.
Yeah.
Who wins, Casey?
Oh, I was just thinking about Jed if Chandler wins and then John Jones loses. Like,
Oh my God.
like I don't know, he might implode, become like a black hole. Like, it just won't make sense.
Oh my God. If Oliveira knocks out Chandler and Stipe knocks out John Jones, Jed might spin out of the building with happiness. It would be unbelievable.
All right. But back to the voting. We have a definitive winner. Your winner today with a solid 57% of the votes. Marcel.
Big Marcel. Big Marcel comes on, gets it done. He defeats the great Alexander K. Lee. Unbelievable. What a debut. Here comes the confetti. Yes, let it rain upon you, Big Marcel. Congratulations. As you know, no cash prizes, but you do get to plug your stuff. You get 30 seconds to say whatever you'd like to say, uninterrupted. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm Big Marcel 24 on Twitter and Instagram. What can I say? Check my stuff out on Twitter and Instagram. I have podcasts as well. You know, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much, guys, for inviting me. Yeah, hope to be back one more time. You know, and to defend this one. But yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I don't have a lot to say as much as thank you for inviting me. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, looking forward to keep following the show. I'm checking it all the time. So yeah, thank you so much, guys.
He doesn't need to plug. He doesn't need to plug anything. If anyone follows MMA, they have seen Marcel's face pop up in their timeline probably once a day. So, just what's going on?
There it is.
All right, sometimes we gotta, to get it to. Okay.
It's actually pretty funny because 24 is my favorite number.
Thank you. I was literally just going to ask. If I do one thing on the show, it's find out why 20. It's just your favorite number. That's it. Why 24?
I'm born on the July 24th, but it's actually nothing to do with it. You know, I just always like 24, so that's why I use it. So
nothing like 24 hours. The show 24. Is there an athlete with the number 24? Just like 24.
Just 24. I don't know why.
That's the scoop. You know, I'm gonna tweet this scoop, Marcel. I'm beating you to this scoop. People are gonna find out about the 24 right now.
There it is. Well, we appreciate you, Marcel. Appreciate you, AK. Appreciate Casey on the ones and twos. And now you can hit the music, Casey, because we are going to get on out of here. Stick with us at MMAfighting.com. It is going to be a crazy, crazy week upcoming. We got to get through UFC Vegas 100. One has actually a pretty good card tomorrow. Anatoly Malkin versus Rug. Should be fun. Will it be? Who the hell knows? That's just this crazy and wild sport that we are a part of, all mixed martial arts. So thank you very much. Back on Tuesday next week for Marcel, for AK, for Casey on the ones and twos, the iconic voice of Esterlin takes you home. Back on Tuesday. Good night, everyone.
This has been Between the Links, an MMA fighting production on the Vox Media Network.